What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to break down some very important news that just came out for Tesla. I'm going to talk about what the technicals are telling us for Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, Meta, and many tickers out there. I'm also going to break down why this week is going to be very interesting because we have Jerome Powell speaking 2 times in a row. Now, before I break anything down about all this information, before I talk about what's going on with all the different tickers, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks with a $100 cash reward. The offer ends in just about 6 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So this video is being recorded on Saturday because I'm going to be unavailable on Sunday. Now, I do apologize if I miss some news that came out for Tesla just in case something happens, but the technicals look very convincing for the market, so I don't believe it's going to matter too much. But first, when we talk about Tesla, we have this head and shoulders that's forming, and obviously this thing is starting to look weaker. But the question is, will Tesla break below the major support zone around that 247 area? The odds are starting to favor that as this head and shoulders looks more and more valid. But we have to also discuss something else going on for the week that could contribute to Tesla slowing down, unfortunately. And what is that? Well, I will get to that in just a couple of minutes. To start us off, we have some earnings coming out for the week. We have Carnival reporting earnings, then we have Jefferies, Manchester United. We also have Micron and Nike for Thursday. Nike's going to be one of the biggest ones for the week, and just a couple of others after that. Overall, earnings aren't that huge, but Nike's going to be one of the biggest ones I look at. But when it comes to the data, we have the Dallas Fed Manufacturing Index report coming out on Monday at about 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And besides that, there isn't way too much coming out for Monday. For Tuesday, we have durable good orders coming out, some data involving that. We have the Housing Price Index report and consumer confidence and new home sales. So quite a bit of data, but nothing major compared to like CPI or something. So there is some data coming out that could cause volatility in the morning, but after about I would say after about 10:30 a.m., things are going to slow down. So there's still not too much coming out from Monday or Tuesday. But by the time we get to Wednesday, things change big time. On Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, when the market opens, Jerome Powell is going to be giving another speech. Remember, for the past week when this guy spoke, the market started slowing down as he said some very hawkish things. He said that if the economy remains very strong, the Fed is going to be open to 2 more rate hikes, and they're going to most likely have to end up doing that if things remain as is. He also mentioned that the real effects of the rate hikes are taking a long time to really show in the economy. And this could depend on many different contingencies, such as the rate at which they raised rates and how fast the market responds based off the current consumer practices. So the Fed knows they have to slow down aggregate demand. They have to slow down demand in the economy to slow down inflation. And so far, there's still a lot of work to be done. So that's why Powell is maintaining this stance. And there are other reasons as well. But just know the important thing is Powell has been more hawkish as of recent, and he's going to be speaking when the market opens on Wednesday. So please be ready for that. And then later on, at about 11:30 p.m. Pacific time, which is about 2:30 a.m. Eastern time, Powell is going to be speaking again. So another speech is coming up. And 2:30 a.m. Eastern time is going to be for Thursday morning. So Powell has another speech going on very early in the morning. This is very important because whatever Powell says could affect the markets again, and this is important because when Powell speaks, it's going to make the headlines. So the headlines are going to come out in the morning. The market may gap up or gap down depending on what he says. And we have to be ready for more volatility because of this. So Powell is going to affect the markets on Wednesday and also for Thursday. So please be ready for that. For Thursday as well, we have GDP numbers coming out. There's a lot of data coming out involving initial jobless claims. And then for Friday, we have PCE coming out alongside the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Report. So lots of data is coming out for the week. Please be ready for all of this. Expect lots of volatility as soon as we start Wednesday. And Powell, once again, is not off our shoulders. He's going to be speaking again. But for Tesla, we have some things coming out that are artificially slowing this thing down by a lot. And this is all part of manipulation and part of the game of trading. So what's going on with Tesla? The price-pairs ratio on Tesla is starting to slow down a bit. This tells us that Tesla is losing some strength compared to the market. This is important because as Tesla slows down and as Tesla hits like a peak level around here, we tend to see Tesla slow down even more over time because of the negative things that come out. And that's what the price price ratio is telling us. Tesla's like in this peak phase and it may start to slow down a bit. On top of that, what is bearish and what is affecting Tesla is the fact that a lot of these banks, a lot of these analysts are saying some negative things about Tesla. We had Barclays saying that you should sell your Tesla shares. You have to remember that they were saying sell out of Tesla, secure profits on it. They are bullish for the longer term, but they're saying that for now we might see some downside on Tesla. And they're saying that it's not a bad idea to secure profits. That's what slowed Tesla down initially. Then we had Morgan Stanley saying that they have equal weight ratings for Tesla. We had Adam Jones and many other individuals saying that Tesla is once again overvalued and Tesla may start to see some downside as well. So more negative analysts came out. And then DC Bank is saying that you should sell Tesla. They downgraded Tesla from a buy to a sell on Friday. So lots and lots of these banks, lots of these individuals are coming out and saying some negative things about Tesla. So please be well aware of that. That is part of why Tesla's slowing down. It's not because Tesla announced some bad news. It's mainly because of external factors and what many others are saying about it. On Mondays, Tesla tends to be green about, I believe, about 53% of the time, but this could change because of the current technicals and what these analysts are saying, and because of the fact that the news cycle is becoming more negative towards Tesla in this cycle. For Tuesdays, Tesla tends to be green about 51% of the time, and then for Wednesdays, it tends to slow down a little bit more historically. June tends to be a good month about 78% of the time for Tesla, and so far, June has been a great month for Tesla overall. It's been pumping a lot, but now it's starting to show some signs of weakness near the very end as we're starting to see a shift in sentiment. During the second hour, Tesla tends to do a little bit better, and also during the fourth hour of the trading day. So watch those hours specifically, and it's going to be very important. And finally, I just want to note that when you look at the short interest, we saw, the short interest start to slow down a bit for Tesla, but now it's starting to trend right back up as we saw another 53 million Tesla shares shorted on Friday. So shorts are starting to pile into Tesla again, and they may try to drag it down as the short volume is starting to go up. And it's very important to go over this because short volume can dictate Tesla as well. During periods of lower short volume, we tend to see Tesla slow down. When it's very high, sometimes that could lead to some squeezing, but typically when it starts to go up during trends like this, when the news is becoming more negative, that could negatively affect Tesla as well. So for the short volume right here, you can see this thing is starting to trend upwards. That could be a little bit negative for Tesla. If it starts to spike a little bit higher, that could slow it down as well. However, it's not the end of the world. We're still going to talk about something else that's big. So another thing that happened is Tesla got another downgrade because many analysts are saying that in China, we may see some more competition for it because of some new tax incentives from the Chinese government. Now, that downgrade right there could be a little concerning to investors, but I'm not going to worry too much until we get the data coming out for the end of June and going into like July. So for now, I'm not really too worried about it. I'm just going to be very patient on this. And other than that, more analysts such as Adam Jones and a couple of others are remaining more bearish on Tesla, saying, you should sell out of it. It may slow down a bit, and just basically things like that, right? But it's not the end of the world for Tesla. It's not necessarily, going to stop the stock, in my opinion, for the longer term. And also, you can't forget deliveries come out in just over a week. So there still is a lot of potential for this company moving forward. There's also news that came out that Washington and Texas are going to be basically the NACS plug will be required at the EV charging stations over there in those states. And that's a very big change in favor of Tesla moving forward. This was good news that came out. But overall, I just want to note that this good news alone is not enough to really trump what these analysts are saying, in my honest opinion. Now, there was more news that came out that the Model Y could slash prices by another $4,850, but this is not really confirmed yet. If this news comes out, we could see Tesla bounce off of this. But once again, it's just not confirmed as of right now. And we have to be very careful when it comes to what these articles say about it. Now, the Model Y saw a lot of sales that came in after the price cuts, and it's continuing to grow moving forward as one of the most popular cars in the world. But I also want to add to the fact that we are entering the summertime, and right now, demand for cars in general and even EVs could start to show some slowing as the rate hikes are starting to affect the economy more and more. Now, as of right now, there's no true major signal of it like hurting Tesla's sales or anything like that until we get the reports. So I'm not really too fixated on that notion, but there's a risk of that later on during the year based off the things Elon Musk said and based off the effects of the rate hikes. Now, there was some news about Elon mode, which is not really what it's called. I mean, there was just a lot of talk about the hackers who hacked the Tesla cars and came up with the ability to find these different modes. But if anything, it's not really a major deal in my eyes. I mean, I'm still very, very excited for Tesla's ability to become a lot more safer after this. And with all these unlocked features, with all everything that was found, it's very interesting. Elon Musk even commented on how Tesla is going to continue to improve their FSD capabilities, and they're going to try to limit pieces of news like this. But it's not impossible for them to. I mean, it's not possible for them to like end it entirely. There are always going to be threats and things like that happening. But there's not much else I could say about it. We just have to remain, very patient and stick to the fundamentals at this point. So for Tesla, what am I seeing? From a technical standpoint, on the 4-hour time frame, it's starting to look more bearish. We were starting to curl right here as Tesla was trying to make its way back up. As it came down on Friday, it made an attempt to break out at 262, but it failed to get the breakout. And as it failed, it came right back down, holding above the 50 EMA on the 4-hour time frame. So now it's basically confirming we have this head and shoulders structure. If it wants to turn bullish, it basically needs to get above 265 and hold above that. Then 270 is going to be the next important level. And if it breaks that, then we have the imbalance close to like the 275s, and then 280 could come. But for now, I'm just trying to tell you, it didn't really do that. It failed to get the breakout. It tried, it just failed. And now we have a more valid looking head and shoulders structure on Tesla. If Tesla breaks the neckline at 247, it's likely going to sink all the way down to a new level, down to like the 435 area. And unfortunately, that is what I would be eyeing at this point in time. Tesla also has this gap down here during the pre-market around like the 244 area and has a lot of gaps below. So not saying it has to crash super hard. I just think that a decent sized pullback would be completely normal. And there's nothing wrong with it because when you look at the daily chart, just look at Tesla, okay? This thing was at 150 back at the end of April. In mid-May, Tesla was in the 160s. Now it's at 256 right now. So it's doing so much better. It's still holding up fine. So even a small drop is completely normal. It's not the end of the world. And I could see it come all the way back down to the high 230s very soon if it gets a break below 247. I believe on Monday, Tesla's going to test 247. And if it fails as soon as Monday, we could see more downside. If it tries to hold it for the time being, which I do believe we're going to see some buyers try to defend that position, we're just going to have to wait and see how it reacts to that. I do believe there's going to be a test of 247 as soon as Monday. It may try to bounce temporarily and just try to hold it, but then later on, the odds do favor it slowing down, especially looking at the daily chart as we're about to get a bearish cross on the PPO. So, like I said, guys, it is starting to show some weakness. We're likely going to see some downside for Tesla, unfortunately, but it's totally okay because we have another catalyst coming out in just under a week and a half. Tesla has deliveries coming out, and it could always make a massive bounce and move to the upside if things are good. If deliveries are concerning and not the best, then it could also slow down. And so far, the data I'm showing you guys looks more promising for Tesla to end up outperforming what people are expecting and end up doing quite well. But we have to wait and see on it. For SPY, like I mentioned before, it looks bearish on the 1 hour. On the 4 hour, which is going to be more significant, it looks a little bit more bearish. To not get the bullish confirmation of a bounce, it still is trending down. The daily is about to get a bearish cross on the PPO looking at the MACD. So the technicals look more bearish on SPY, but we're going to be watching for a critical test at 430. If 430 breaks, it has the potential to come all the way down to the lower 420s. So 430 is going to be major. If it fails at 430, it's going to get rug pulled all the way down to fill the gap in the low 420s. If it bounces off 430, we're going to be watching this thing potentially try to hold these levels, and it could make its way back up to even like fill this gap if it gets a very nice bounce off 430. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the odds favor this thing eventually testing 430 very soon, and we will see if it tries to hold. I'm not going to call if it's going to break or not. I do believe the odds favor it coming down, but I'm going to be watching for confirmation just to be safe. You understand what I'm saying? Watch 430, break below it, and then the bears are going to take big advantage of that. They're going to be watching it, and they're going to try to rug pull it, and We have to be very, very careful when watching it simultaneously. We should not be too biased. If it tries to push to the upside, watch 434 as resistance, which is going to be the 50 EMA on the 4 hour, 435. And if that breaks, if it holds above 435, we have this gap up here at around like 436.5, which could come. But like I said, I'm not really counting on it. I am anticipating maybe a small bounce for Monday and a rejection off maybe the 50 or so, maybe a 434 retest, then more potential downside. And I could see this thing make its way closer to 430. With Jerome Powell speaking, if he says lots of hawkish things, that could be the catalyst to bring this thing down. So please be very careful. The Jerome Powell effect is in full mode right now, so just be careful. GME is looking bearish, continuing to downtrend. We're going to be watching 22.8 and potentially the 21.5 area if it continues to sink. 22.8 has that imbalance. There's also like the 21 area. Looking more bearish, just wanted to note that. I'm going to talk about maybe like NEO now. I'm just going to briefly go over just a couple of tickers just to get this quickly done with. On NEO, we're going to be watching this thing basically trend down. It looks more bearish to me. So I'm going to be watching this like 7.8 area and potentially $7 around there. And it could bounce depending on deliveries. If it does bounce, watch resistance around the 8s. But for the time being, right, if it tries to push up, watch 8.5, 8.8, and 9. For the bearish price action, watch 7.8, 7.5, and beyond. The odds favor this thing coming down and maybe bouncing later on depending on the reports. For Netflix, this is trying to make a bounce right here, trying to get a bullish cross, but it is below the 50. If it holds above the 50 EMA, if it manages to get above it, it could push all the way up to about 433. If it rejects off the 50, I'm going to be watching this thing come all the way down to 420, 417, then potentially even lower levels into like the 414s or lower. So please watch all of these very carefully. All right. For the QQQ, let me just note that the QQQ right now is above the 50 EMA. If it bounces off this area, we're going to be watching 363 as resistance, 364. If it breaks above that, watch 366. But 363 is going to be the most important resistance as of right now, the most important area. If it breaks below that, it's very likely it's going to get very close to about 360. And that's going to be critical for support. Now, if it does come all the way down there to 360, that's going to be the next very important level, because if it breaks below that, it could start to see more downside. The 4 hour looks bearish. The 1 hour, the daily, looks very bearish as well. On the daily chart, you can see we already got this bearish cross. And I just want to note that there is a head and shoulders developing on it. It's a little bit like hard to see in a way, but it's quite clear. You can see we have a possible like left shoulder, the head, and the right shoulder right over here. A break below the 50 would set this thing down, a break and hold below it, and then the 1 hour 200 EMAs at like 361. If it breaks that as well, that would be bearish. I think the odds favor a test at 360, and we will see if it bounces or not. I think it's going to eventually break down because of Powell and other factors, but let's just wait for confirmation just to be safe. For the NASDAQ, we have a head and shoulders developing. We also have this gap down here at like the 13,200 area. If it continues to break down, this head and shoulders could play out for the NASDAQ, just like the QQQ, and the odds are favoring downside looking at the 4 hour and also on the daily. It looks more bearish to me. 13,200 could be tested. That's what I'm seeing on here. If it tries to balance, 13,500 is going to be resistance, followed by 13,600. I don't really see it bouncing too hard. I just see maybe a small bounce followed by more downside being more likely. SPX has 4,300 as the most important level. If that breaks, it's going to come all the way down to fill these gaps down here at the 4220 area, then potentially even the 4100s. So watch that carefully. The 4 hour looks more bearish, maybe a small bounce, then potentially a back test of 4,300. And if that fails us, like I said, more downside could come. The VIX has a potential bullish divergence developing. If it starts uptrending, we're going to be watching this thing get closer to $15. We need confirmation, which would be a break above and a hold at 13.5. And if it maintains a bullish amount of technicals, it could start pushing to the upside. If that happens, that's going to be bearish for the markets. And it's not because of this, but this is just like a bearish signal, basically. We have a potential signal that the VIX may start pushing up. Why? Because of the market sinking down as implied volatility goes up for the S&P 500. So that's telling us that the market may cause the VIX to go up, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. I know sometimes I word the entire thing a little bit off sometimes. I do apologize about that, but it is what it is, right? Looking at the SQQQ, we have the 50 EMA as resistance. If it breaks above this at 20.3, it has the potential to push up to about the next important level. I would say this thing could get closer to the high 21s, which is where we have the gap up here, and then we have this 23 zone afterwards. Now, there's a possible inverse head and shoulder structure developing, and it is looking like an accumulation is forming right over here. If it starts pushing up and breaks the 50, this thing can start pushing up. And if that happens, that is going to once again be because of the QQQ and NASDAQ slowing down. It looks to me like that's very likely, and we are getting some bullish signals on it for now, but we need confirmation, which would be a break above the 50. The dollar could be forming an inverse head and shoulders structure right here. We have a potential left shoulder, the head and like the right shoulder developing. Could come down a little bit as the market pumps a tiny bit in the morning for Monday. And then we could start to see, the market try to base here and this thing start pushing up as the market starts slowing down. So I do believe that's very possible, but we have to watch for confirmation. Sorry, if the dollar ends up bouncing off the 50 at 102.69. For Coinbase, it's looking pretty decent right now. It is trying to push it up. It has an uptrend so far being respected. If it breaks 62, watch 64, then potentially 66. If it breaks down, watch 60 as support. If that fails us, we're going to be watching this 59 area, then 57.6, then 56.5, then potentially 55. I'm currently in the middle with Coinbase as it's still trending upwards, but we need confirmation to turn more bullish. It basically bounced off some very nice news that came out. And when that happens, you just want to be careful because sometimes, after the news settles, stocks start to slow down. We also have this imbalance down here at 56. If it starts breaking below 60, then it's likely going to come all the way back down to like 57.6 in my opinion. But just to be safe, we're going to watch and see for confirmation first. For, I would say Aapl to me is looking in the middle. It has resistance at 187.5, and if it breaks that, it could make its way closer to about 187.69, potentially even like 188 afterwards. It is getting very tight at these high levels because of resistance, but there's a bearish divergence developing, and there's a high probability Apple might start to downtrend a bit and retest 185 in my opinion, or even 183.95, which is where the 50 is. But as long as it remains above the 50, it has potential to uptrend, as it still is on an uptrend technically and has not been invalidated. So watch this carefully. If it breaks below the 50, you're going to be watching the 182s, followed by 180 and then 178. A break and hold below the 50 is going to be a bearish signal. So far, it hasn't done that, so I'm not going to assume it's going to happen. But I do believe, looking at the current technicals with this bearish divergence, there's a good chance it's going to come closer to like 185 or lower very soon. For the Nvidia stock, we're going to be watching this potential head and shoulders playing out. We have this like distribution phase that's developing. And finally, you're going to be watching this 50 EMA at around this like 417 area. If it breaks below the 50, it has a good chance of coming all the way down to about 405 or so, or even lower than that. So watch that very carefully. It is looking like it's starting to curl. The 4-hour looks more bearish on Nvidia, so I'm going to be very careful. It may try to bounce initially off the 50, so maybe it gaps. In the pre-market, it comes down and then tries to gap down a little bit before bouncing a little bit to about like 425, and then it starts to downtrend again as it tests this. I believe it's going to test this 417 area at the 50 EMA on the 4-hour time frame. I think we're going to find out if it breaks or not. If it breaks because of the market dragging it down, the odds favor more downside. If not, it could try to bounce technically, but I think with the NASDAQ looking more bearish, the odds favor Nvidia coming down to like the lower 400s, but I'm going to be open-minded and very patient just to be safe. For Google, it's basically looks very decent. The market could drag Google down if it rejects off the 50, but there's a possible inverse head and shoulders developing technically right here with the bullish divergence. It is a possibility that plays out, but not a guarantee, so I'd be very careful. I would just wait on this and see how it reacts to the 50. If it gets above the 50, it's going to push up for 126. If it gets above like 123.45 above the 50 EMA, it could push for 126. If it rejects, it could get closer to about 120, and we're going to be watching it maybe even get below that for 119. So what I think is going to happen is we just have to watch it and see if it can get above the 50. If it does, that's bullish. If not, just be patient. For Amazon, it's very tight, so watch it carefully as well. If it does continue to downtrend, it could be flagging, but just be patient with that. It is looking to me like it's going to get a backtest of this like 126 area because it did close below 130. But always be patient and always be calm, cool, and collected just to be safe. If Amazon manages to break above 131, it could push for 132 plus. So we're going to be watching these levels carefully, and until then, just be patient. For Meta, it's above the 4-hour 50 EMA. If it maintains a stance above this level, it could continue to uptrend and make its way closer to about the 300 level. If it breaks above 290, that would be like a bullish signal. But for now, there's no confirmation just yet, and there's a bearish divergence that's developing. Now, it's developing. That does not guarantee it's going to play out. Okay, there's a big difference between it playing out and it developing. So what I would say is there's a good chance maybe Meta cools off a little bit, Could it get a test close to where like the 50 EMA is? It is possible. I think on the 2 hour, that's like a lot stronger. So I was looking at the 2 hour. You could see like right here, it's been like trending above the 50 EMA. That's going to be closer to about 182. So maybe Meta cools off one more time to like 182, then tries to bounce. If it breaks below 182, this 182 zone, we could see this thing start to downtrend even more, but not a guarantee because there's no confirmation of that downtrend on the chart as it's still on an uptrend, still looking quite strong. So I'm going to be looking for a potential backtest in the balance, but until then, that's what I have for Meta. For Tesla, just so you guys know, for tomorrow, we might see Tesla try to bounce a little bit, try to push up to this like 259 to 260 area and then start to downtrend. But I do believe the odds favor it eventually making its way down to this like 247 area. So it might try to bounce and then come down to 247. And we're going to see if this thing could hold it. That's the last point of hope for the bulls. If 247 breaks on Tesla, that's it. It's going to likely sink a lot lower, unfortunately. Right? It has this gap. There's like a gap somewhere around in the pre-market. It formed a gap around like the 244 area all the way down there. And if that fails us, there's 240, then like 235 for the gap fill. If it breaks below 240, it's most likely going to just fill the gap down to like the 235 area. I think the odds favor downside on it. Just looks very bearish on this head and shoulders formation, also based off looking at SPY and the QQQ. But we need confirmation, of course. So we're just going to watch for 247, watch 247 carefully. If it breaks below it, that's going to be your confirmation of more downside. If it manages to hold for the time being, just be patient and let the charts tell you what happens. But I do believe it could get a small bounce and then start to downtrend and make its way down to 247 very soon over the next couple of trading days, if not as soon as Monday. And then we will see where it goes from there. If Tesla tries to hold 247 for the time being, watch Jerome Powell during his speech. If he causes the market to get a rug pull, that could be the catalyst that slows Tesla down alongside something else involving the news. The news has been more negative about Tesla with all the analysts, so just be very mindful of that and just be very patient. With that said, just know the odds are favoring downside now. Please remain calm, cool, and collected. Watch support and resistance. If Tesla tries to bounce, watch resistance around 259, 260, 262, then 265. The odds are so far not favoring it doing that. I mean, it failed to hold 265. To turn bullish, it has to break above it, and so far it has not done that. So, like I said before, the odds are favoring this thing getting a small bounce, maybe a back test of like 259 or so, then starting to come right back down to 247. And if 247 breaks, which I believe it will in the future, we will eventually see Tesla sink to 235 into the high 230s, in my opinion. And honestly, guys, I just want to watch for confirmation just to be safe. So watch 247 as the neckline. And until then, I thank you all so much for listening. So enjoy your weekend, guys. Tesla to the moon because the long term is still incredibly bright alongside the whole market. And peace out.